Am I good, girls? Am I a good girl? Yeah, all right, very good. Welcome, everyone, to our Discovery Wednesday class with Guy. It is a beautiful evening here in Southern Oregon. Glad you could join us. Hello to our in-person audience. Hello to our online audience. Am I waving to the right place? This one, hi, okay. We're still working with new cameras, which you probably notice, as we go from class to class, but stick with us, we're getting better at it. If you are new tonight, our format for tonight is that in just a moment, Guy will come on and give an hour-long talk, and then we'll take a short 5-minute break. We'll come back for part 2 of class, which is an open Q&A dialogue discussion time with all of you here in the room, all of you online. I'll tell you more about how you can participate in that later on. For you in the room, if you brought a cell phone, if you could please check and make sure that it's silent, that would be great. And for you online, if you have any technical issues during the broadcast, just reach out to us in the question area, chat area, send an email to support@guyfinley.org, and I'll be happy to help you. All right, we're ready to get started. I'm going to read the title and the key lesson to kick things off, and then I'll hand it over to Guy. The title tonight is Transform Any Painful Relationship into a Spiritual Triumph. And here's the key lesson. When it comes to conflict between us and any other, let alone a person we may love, anytime there's some kind of painful drama being enacted, each one of us is responsible for whatever continues to be played out on that stage.
Wide awake. Just be here long enough to take in the impression that's intended to be conveyed. If you've never joined us on a Wednesday, a few Wednesdays a month, we do something called Discovery Wednesday, where we work together as a group at a certain point in the talk, that we might together learn to see and, God willing, at least take in the impression, if not actually understand, where it is and why it is. And maybe this doesn't trouble you. I would pray that it does. When does the world change? The short answer is the world changes when you change. When you change the way you see the world. That's when it changes, and not before. It's not for, I'll say it positively, there's a good reason why through the ages the blessed individuals who have been here have tried to convey this seemingly simple idea, but that falls quite literally on deaf ears. You need new eyes. You actually need to be able to see what is in front of you all the time, but that you don't see. And you don't see because the impressions that are intended to produce a real change in you are deflected by all kinds of buffers, beliefs, opinions, conditional wishes and longings. All of those things interfere with you understanding that, well, like Christ said, a metanoia, not just a new mind, but intrinsic in the idea of a new mind is a mind that no longer looks just outside, no longer looks at just the person or the place or the problem they blame for their pain, but learn, if nothing else, by the sheer fact that nothing has changed in millennia. Listen to me. You and I, to whatever degree is true, have not changed because the weight of human consciousness remains in place. And we are as much immersed in that murky misunderstanding of life as everyone who was here before us that fell into that same unconscious state. So to understand what a grand struggle it is, not that you'll ever find any comfort in realizing what it is that is asked of you as a human being, but to even suspect the scale of it. That I'm asked to do something that affects every human being on the planet, not just my mother and my father who are gone, not just my brother and sister who irritate the bejeebies out of me, but every human being I will ever meet. I'm asked to see something that, if I would see it clearly, would change me and the way I see them and the world around me. And in that moment, whether it's understood or not, the whole of human consciousness goes under a true transformation. And by the way, and it matters not whether anybody on the planet knows that it has. You will know that you have, and therefore you will know everyone has begun to be different, because now you see them differently, you treat them differently, and when you do that, they have to change and will change by a certain set of laws. That whatever it is that you bring to the moment, when you bring something new to the moment, what is old cannot continue. Everybody still following me? I didn't mean to take 5 full minutes for that, but so many questions all the time, the same question. Not that you shouldn't ask it. If you have to ask, you ask. Why is he like that? Why is she doing this? Why are people this way instead of that way? What am I to do with how disturbed I am over what you said? In a million different ways, we encounter this idea where we continue as human beings to look at what is presented to, not us, but our reaction to them, and then believe that the actions we have to take somehow need to change what it is that that person is and does, because if they don't change what they is and does, we done. And that is the King's English. Thank you. We live with anger. We live with enemies. Like that, yes or no? And because of it, and the reluctance of humanity itself, not to mention its political, religious, philosophical, and so-called spiritual leaders, we have been induced into a culturally mandated compassion. Where if you don't feel the way you're supposed to feel about this situation, if you don't see me the way I want you to see me, then you're canceled. You have no rights, and everything must be stripped from you because you have been stripped of your humanity. And how do I know? Because you don't agree with me. True or not? And we're so sure. That's the extraordinary. You know why people don't stay with the love of truth? Do you know why people don't stay on the spiritual path, even though some people think they do? Do you know why they don't? Because to do so means that I'm going to have to actually start to suspect that my anger and frustration and irritation isn't because of others. And I can't bear that. I know. Don't you know? By the way, that'll be something on next Wednesday's topic. We're going to pick up. How does all this go on? I'm asking, how does all of this go on unseen, let alone unchecked? You ready? Take a deep breath. You need a certain subtlety here. We're not known for our subtlety. A man was an employee at a zoo. And this man working at the zoo was responsible for the primates, the people that they sold tickets to. No, responsible for the primate section. And every day he didn't want to come to work because before he got there, he could hear the chimps and the monkeys. He could hear them carrying on. And finally one day, because it was his job to feed them, he was so tired of their constant chattering that he decided to take a certain action. And what he decided to do was he brought with him 2 bananas, and he walked into the monkey compound, and he sat down there, and the monkeys know, and they walked up, and he gave a couple of them a banana. And when they were sitting there quietly peeling the banana, comfortable, he began to quietly explain as best he could why they needed to change their behavior. This isn't really a funny story. And how, if they were more civilized, they wouldn't be constantly making these noises and irritating, he said, everybody that comes to the cage. But of course, he was talking about himself, wasn't he? So he went on from that point, increasingly getting agitated as he was resisting his own condition, explaining to them if they would just change their behavior, even that much, he would bring them each 3 bananas a day. Now, he was expecting a certain result, but what was actually happening was, as his agitation grew and grew and grew, explaining how they needed to be different and imploring them to change their behavior, the monkeys were actually sensing something else, weren't they? And what were the monkeys sensing? His anxiety, his anger, and all of the things that he was frustrated about. And the more they picked up on it, finally they reached a certain point where what banana they had left, they threw at him. And as they threw it at him, they all retreated to their perches where they were stomping their feet. But no one knew they were stomping their feet because he was running out of the cage stomping his feet. What's the moral of this story? What? If only you knew not to talk to monkeys. Or more accurately, how to talk to a monkey. No, the moral of the story is monkey see, monkey do. And the question is, if you could see it, where does one begin and the other end? If I believe that you're chattering and you're screeching and you're stomping and the things that you do in your unconscious monkey-like behavior, and all unconscious behavior is no different than a monkey. Is everybody still online, Kate? Where does it end? Where do I, as a man, stop walking away from you because you throw your banana at me when I try to tell you how to be a different kind of monkey? Because I know I'm spiritual, you're not. Monkeys aren't spiritual. I, on the other hand, have transcended my monkeyhood. I'm now Hanuman. Nobody knows what that means. Anyway. The moral of the tale? You get it? How strange is it that we don't see these things? Does that man who may have done that 1,000 times, you understand that, don't you? Does he understand the strained stress of that circle that he's in? Does he? How come? Pregnant question. Let's bring up key lesson number 2. Read along and let the impression fall where it will. Every argument with another begins with each person signing an invisible contract that has written at its bottom in the tiniest of print the following words: to be continued. What if you knew that? What if you knew that every time you have a negative reaction, whether it's with the world or somebody in your life, and you get all up in arms and you start to talk to them or talk to yourself, that before you're engaged in that conversation, you have signed a document that you can't see at the bottom, and it says to be continued, which means it never matters whether you throw the banana or they throw the banana, or you throw the bananas at each other and finally collapse in exhaustion. Makes no difference. What's going to happen? To be continued. Now, can you see that's true or not? You think about how many times people take exception with you and you take exception with people. He says this, you don't like it, you're going to straighten them out. They're like this, they're not supposed to be like that. You put your foot down or you don't, or you step on yourself to keep yourself quiet. Is it brought to an end? Is it ever? Out loud, please. No. Then why keep doing it? Look, you just said, no, it never ends, that there really is this, like the commercials when they say, take this drug and it'll fix everything. It'll kill the rest of you, but that one little rash, it'll go away. So when they bury you, you're going to look good. How does it go on? What in the name of God, quite literally, is taking place that continues the way that it does? I have an act for you to help explain a little deeper the impression. And while they're coming up, I will set the stage. Nice deep breath. Here before you, you see, actually in real life, a husband and wife, but they are playing a part that takes place after they're on the plane flying home from a family reunion. And they're sitting there in tiny chairs like this, which really makes everything a lot more difficult. And they're stressed. And they're stressed because he's tremendously stressed. And he's complaining about his brother, Stan, his sister, Cheryl, his uncle, the cousins. He's just all up in arms about it. And poor wifey is stuck in a chair on a fully loaded plane with nowhere else to go. And this is where the conversation picks up.
Boy, talk about arrogance. What about how Stan just walks around like he owns the joint?
I guess.
And I don't like the general tone of Cheryl's voice either. That irritating edge. You know what I mean?
Not really.
And let's not forget Tim and Tina. Did you see the way they reacted when I suggested that next year we could hold the reunion someplace just a little closer to where we live?
Well, they did say that if...
It's so obvious. They only care about themselves. He just wants what he wants, and she just caves in all the time.
I'm curious. Did you ask Stan not to walk that way or ever mention to Cheryl how she talks at a pitch that troubles you? You know, that she might be more conscious of how she sounds.
You and I both know they don't really care about how their words and deeds make me feel. So what's the point?
Well, since you put it that way, please tell me, how are they to know that they continue to fail at what you need them to be, unless you ask them to toe that line?
Oh, come on. Well, I don't know. I mean, it's not really my place to bring up these things, is it?
I see. Then perhaps you might consider asking an altogether different question than asking about what's wrong with almost everyone you just spent the week with.
And what would that be?
Who are you to ask anything of these people you said that you loved, let alone judge and then blame them for failing to be as you asked them to be, as you silently demanded they should be?
I don't understand what you're trying to tell me here.
Well, that kind of makes my point, doesn't it? Okay, look, I'll tell you what. How about I help you see what I'm trying to tell you? It's entirely up to you.
How about I help you see what you don't see? The wife in this instance represents Sophia, wisdom, an awareness that the man doesn't have. I shudder to say that because it'll bring up in some of you. What is there for us to see in the two stories that we've just had? Monkey see, monkey do. Nothing changes. And a man who, after a family reunion, and by the way, that's just part one, there's part two to their story, who is convinced that Stan and Cheryl and his cousins and family, that every last one of them care about nothing other than themselves. And that's why he has every right to blame them and judge them for being such unsavory characters. What are we to see about that? Is he alone in this life like that? It's your turn. In order to understand these two stories, we're going to work together to create a list. And let's bring the list up so we can introduce it to the people in the room and, of course, everyone joining us online. The list is, and we're going to make it together, what is something that others may say or do that can turn you dark and negative before you even know it, and where, no matter who it may be, even a loved one, can make of him or her a temporary enemy. In other words, over what is it that we fight with people when we do? Over what is it that we fight with people when we do? I'll just prime the pump, as I like to say. I get pretty irritated with people when they disrespect me. Would you say that that's a pretty big one? How about when someone has a belief or an opinion, especially if it's counter to my own, you can be sure there's conflict there. And of course, mine is the right opinion and belief. Therefore, the fault, the frustration, the pain I feel is because of that human being who is still a monkey in my mind's eye. Yes or no? How about, you know what? Look at everything I do. They don't toe the line. They just don't do what they're supposed to do. And how do I feel about that? Hello? How do I feel about that? Am I a bright sunspot or am I negative before I even get a chance to talk to you? Because as a rule, we carry around all of the residue of these unresolved relationships that we have blamed on everyone else. Yes or no? So I am now bringing you in. I want to know over what is it that we fight with people when we do. Babs.
They don't take my helpful advice.
They seem to ignore my wisdom. Babs said, they don't take my helpful advice. Look, you know, for fun, we'll change it up. If you agree, I'll ask yes or no. You say yes or no out loud so we all know we're on the same page. Do we agree?
Yes.
Terry.
When I'm accused of something.
Oh boy, when I'm accused of something by someone, it really sets me off. Yes or no?
Yes.
Over to the board here. When they do everything illegal to make me pay for their actions. Yes or no? Well, I guess it depends which side of the fence you're on, doesn't it? Yeah, Roger.
When somebody tells me what to do.
Somebody tells me what to do and I didn't ask them. Oh boy, John.
When someone tells me I'm negative.
Anytime my wife tells me I'm negative, yes or no? Yes. Come on. Yes. Why do you think that I ask you to be involved this way? You don't know how fast you go to sleep. A thought gets you and you're not even in the room anymore. You're with the monkeys. Over on the board, when people are angry with me, yes or no? Yes. Juan says, when I don't get, I don't get the credit I deserve. Yes or no? Yeah. In the room, Debbie.
This just happened to me. Somebody told me I was stubborn.
Oh no, she said, my husband said I was stubborn. It wasn't your husband? Okay, somebody said I was stubborn. Let me ask you a question. Can we just kind of broadly say, anytime anybody criticizes me for the smallest thing, it makes me negative, yes or no? Randall, when they don't agree with my judgment of others, yes or no? Chrissy?
They don't consider my time or energy.
Oh my God. They don't consider the sacrifices that I make for them. Yes or no? Yes. And when they don't, I keep doing it, don't I? Yes. In the room, Pat.
Just like Roger said, anything follows, you should.
Anytime anybody says you should or you ought to be, yes or no? Yes. On the board, they don't, anytime, this is interesting, he says, anytime someone doesn't tell the truth, yes or no? Now, the interesting thing is that I automatically know when someone's telling the truth and when they're not. For instance, if they suggest that I'm stubborn, they're not telling the truth. Yes or no? So it's completely arbitrary, isn't it, where truth and lies fall. Yes or no? And Rob says, when people don't confirm when people don't confirm the image I have of myself, said in different terms, when people don't see my gloriousness and in any way impugn it, or don't at least recognize to some extent what a blessing it is that I'm with them, then I get negative. Yes or no? In the room. Jane.
When someone questions my integrity.
God forbid anyone should question my integrity. And by the way, what kind of integrity do I have when I'm tearing you apart for questioning my integrity? In the room, anybody? Wayne.
When someone doesn't take my advice.
Anytime, well, we got that one. Somebody doesn't take my advice. Paul.
When someone excludes me.
Oh, God. I didn't get invited to the party I didn't want to go to in the first place. Yes or no? They don't want to talk to me. I don't want to talk to them, but they should talk to me so at least I can feel superior to them when I'm talking to them. Yes or no? In the room. Terry.
Someone corrects me.
Yeah, we got that one. Anytime someone corrects me. John.
When someone's already made up their mind that I'm wrong before they even have a chance to hear what
Before anybody hears my wisdom, they've decided I'm stupid. Yes or no? John. It was the same as John? John 2. Anybody else on the board? When people don't see how I'm struggling to be what I am struggling to be. Yes or no? Shouldn't everybody acknowledge people don't acknowledge my pain, which really pains me. Yes or no? If people are ungrateful, people don't give me the proper thank you. Yes, Chrissy? Yeah. Okay, that's probably enough of that. So here we've got, 25 or 30 different ways in which we get into an uproar. We're disturbed when people don't what? This is what we're working to now. What's going on? We've just made this long list. What can we make of these findings that you and I have just agreed? For the most part, most of us are complicit in feeling conflicted and want to blame others for that pain that we feel. Yes or no? So what is it, if anything, that is unseen in this source of suffering? Would you agree that even though it all seems like it's a bunch of different reasons for suffering, what if you and I could see there was one unseen source behind all of that? Wouldn't that at least, if we could get the impression, at least produce a moment of question instead of just jumping into conflict with them? Yes or no, please? What do you think it is that causes all of that for us? You might want to write it down. No, I'm not going to ask you. In moments like this, these people are not doing it as I've asked them to do. They're not being what I've asked them to be. You look at any one of these examples and you will see that prior to the moment that this person did, said, or acted out what set you off, you couldn't possibly have been set off by them unless coming into that moment you had, much to our story, had asked them without ever asking them not to do that or to be other than their being. Please, do I need to explain that any further, or do you understand it? Somebody is disrespectful to you. What you call disrespectful means they have not done what you've asked them to be, which is to pay total respect to everything you say or do, even though, by the way, you do nothing of that when it comes to them. I've asked you to be polite, but I didn't write it out. I just came into the moment with you and you're not even paying attention to me. Does that upset me when you don't pay attention to me? Yes or no? And God forbid, and it happens all the time, that I should be in the middle of telling you something about myself, which I always want to do, and you just brush it off like I don't exist. Do you get upset when people act like you don't exist because they're more interested in proving their own existence to you? Yes or no? So you're not doing what I've asked you to do. You're not acting the way I need you to be, which is to do what? To be and to do everything that I've asked you to do and to be, only that you don't know that I've asked you to do and be it. See, I don't know where all this falls on you. Here I am, I've asked you to treat me in a certain way, and you're involved in some other thought. You take no impression from me at all, and instead what you're doing is pushing back on me what it is that you want me to do or to be in that moment. And here you get two monkeys. Yes, two human beings completely captives of an unconscious function in themselves that came into that moment with them that demands the other person answer the desire that you don't even know you have about their nature. And then you wonder why we throw bananas at each other and storm out. Oh, and what was written at the bottom of that contract when that argument started? Is it continued or not? Isn't it the history of humanity, this continuing conflict, because no one will do what we've asked them to do? Don't be a Christian, be a Jew. Don't be a Hindu, be a Muslim. Don't be this kind of political person, be that kind of political person. Don't hold up this belief, hold up that belief. Don't eat these foods, eat this food. Don't take that drug, try these drugs at a discount. And buy my sheets and pillow covers. Which are on sale for the last 87 years. Sorry, a little rant. Letting a little pressure off. So people don't do, the problem is they're not doing what they don't know I've asked them to be and to do. Do you see that with me? We ask everyone, and especially those who are closest to us, which is kind of funny, the closest monkey in our family, that we ask in 100 different ways and techniques. Do you know that you have techniques of asking people to be what you want them to be? Have you ever studied that? I guarantee you, if I made a list, you don't know unless we actually brought it out. What are the techniques that I use to get you to do what I'm asking you to do? For instance, if you don't ask what I do you to do, if you don't do what I've asked you to do, what kind of person do I become? Demure? Sweet? Giving? No. What do I do when you will not give me what I've asked you for? That, like in our story, I never come out and ask directly. And let's say I did ask. What difference would it make what it is that you do with what I ask of you unless I begin to understand the critical thing is that, and to the point of this part, and I'm going to bring up our special writing here in a moment, I ask everything of you. I ask nothing of myself. That's all I know. What I ask you to do, what I ask you to be, how I want you to behave, what I want you to believe. I never ask anything of myself. And the only time, by the way, that I ever, in quotes, ask something of myself is when for asking, it will somehow turn a relationship I'm in into something that will be what I want and ask from that. We call that compromise. At the bottom of every contract of compromise is written what? To be continued. Let's bring up the special writing, please. Read along with me, and you have it in your chair with you, I believe, in the room. Here, Patricia. Okay. In our virtually constant state of distress, We almost never stop asking the world and everyone we know in it to complete us. That is, until upon some blessed day, we awaken to see that we have had everything about our relationships with others upside down and backwards. And it is on that same day we begin in earnest to work at actualizing the following truth that sets us free. Before we will ever know anything about the true nature of divine love, we must first learn to ask something of ourselves, and then summon the courage to make that sacrifice as needed. We must first learn to ask something of ourselves if we're ever going to know anything about the nature of love, which is why we don't know anything about the nature of an unconditional love. Our love is full of the conditions predicated on the things we have asked that people do and be, and that they give us accordingly. And what happens when, for the love that we give, we don't get what we've asked for in return? What happens to that love? Not just with people around us, but with everyone. What happens to it? Pat said it flips. No, it doesn't flip. It reveals that we've never known anything about the love that we imagine ourselves knowing about. That's what it proves. We must learn to ask something of ourselves. When you get upset with someone, aren't you, and you evidence it through your techniques, aren't you asking them to see what they need to see so they're no longer a thorn in your side? When was the last time when somebody was a thorn in your side that you said, let me ask of myself, what is it that's taking place here? What is it I don't see? And what is it that I can, if I'm willing to see the truth of this moment, what would it mean to me? How would that change my relationship with you, where if instead of just reacting as I always do, when you don't do as I'm silently demanding you do, what would do that relationship if all of a sudden, instead of being full of resistance and throwing a banana at you, I sat there and quietly, listen, became what I want you to be? Christ spoke of this new kind of understanding when he said, no greater love hath a man or a woman than he or she who will lay down their life for his friends. No greater love does an individual have than he or she who will lay down their life for their friends. You see, that's not some beautiful quote that you say and then think to yourself, oh, isn't that beautiful? To understand in the moment that what is required of me is that I not only is this moment where I'm feeling this resistance, where I'm present to some extent of the pain of a demand that has just appeared out of nowhere over nothing. Isn't it true? Over nothing? Yes or no? Why do I never ask of myself what's required in that moment? Instead, only identify with what you have failed to answer, that I need you to do and be so that I can continue being myself as I've imagined. I'd have to actually see that. And then something else would have to happen. Part 2 of the story of husband and wife and their adventures with Stan and Cheryl and their conflict-producing cousins. Ready? Nice deep breath. 6 months flies by. Now, unbeknownst even to his wife, the husband took to heart some of what she said. He would never outwardly say, yeah, show me. But he began to mull over the fact that, in fact, every time he's with these people, he's mauled. That it feels like to him the zoo is his family, not that he's a monkey. And so what happens is 6 months later, Stan and Cheryl and a cousin or two decide they're going to visit the husband and wife where they live. Even though they only have a 2-bedroom house, Six family members have descended upon it with all of their bags, asking the husband to bring them in the house. So you can imagine what that, supposed to be 2 days, what that 24-day visit would elicit. Can you not? So there they are, and they're on the way to the airport to drop off Stan and Cheryl and well, it was an alliteration I liked, but I lost it. And their cousins. And when everybody gets out of the car and husband and wife are in the car, she looks over at her husband and goes, "Oh my God." And he says, "Well, what is it?" She said, "I've never seen you be with these people without going at it like cats and dogs. And I must add that I can see they're still barking quite a bit. But yet you seemed, I don't know, like strangely free of that conflict and the condition that personally I found intolerable. Look, I've broken out." My blood pressure's at an all-time high. What happened to you? And he just looked at her and said, "I decided not to be me anymore." What? How did you do that? Thinking maybe her husband, that she had not so much respect for, had maybe stumbled on the secret of the ages. "How did you do that?" And he said, "Let me be honest with you. You remember 6 months ago or so, we had this conversation after our family reunion?" "I do. I took some of what you said to heart. I started to really think about what it is that you were trying to tell me. And out of that, I was able to see something that, not that it isn't the most painful thing in the world," he said, "but I reached a major decision in my life." "Go on," she said. "What was that major decision?" He said, "Well, the difference that you witnessed this time around between myself and my family is really the result of me sticking to that decision." Now she's thinking, he's teasing her. What decision? "I've seen and proven to myself now that it's much better for me to no longer be me, not to mention for everyone else in my life." Now, naturally, the rest of the conversation on the way home, and God willing, because they both had turned a certain page in their spiritual journey, she began to ask and he began to study more deeply, and then ask of her in those moments where all of that blame would come up because he or she wasn't being what they were asked to be. They came upon a certain finding, which I'm going to give you in the last key lesson of this talk, which is, for all intents and purposes, the main lesson and the exercise that I will go into some depth with. Can we bring up the last key lesson, please? Please let it fall on you properly, taking into account everything that we've looked at together. Until we learn how to voluntarily bear our own suffering, we will never come to understand the suffering of others. And until we understand the suffering of others, we will never know any true peace of mind or heart, let alone in this troubled world of ours. Do you know why you don't know other people suffer exactly the same thing that you do? Because you're too busy blaming them for the suffering that you feel. And that's the only reason. Because it's, to use words, it's right there in front of you. In fact, Insight Timer this Saturday, I'm going to expand upon that. And it's, in one respect, it's nobody's fault. Which means there's no one to judge, but there is something to see and understand about this. And it begins with something that not one of us wants to even consider, let alone begin to do, as he said. To be honest, it's the most painful thing in the world, but this decision was evident in the impression that I received. I can't be me anymore. But what does it mean? It means I'm going to have to learn to bear my own suffering when it comes up and not find reasons that blame you or them or this or the world for why I'm on fire. There can no longer be me and you. There can just be what is in the moment, and what is in the moment is evident that I can't stand being in pain. And every pain that I feel is because of what you've produced in me. And there's no other pain except for that. Except there's one problem. That when I throw a banana at you, you throw a banana back at me. And at the bottom of that relationship in that zoo filled with unconscious human beings is that little phrase that we don't want to know because it's so inconvenient. Which is what? Please God that gradually you are able to consistently remember sooner and sooner that you will never be in a contentious relationship with anyone or anything on this planet. That for the fact of your resistance to what you blame for them producing in you, that the word resistance is synonymous with continuous. And then, not because you're courageous or brave or spiritual or any of that other junk that people try to sell you to prop you up, that you understand, all I know how to do is ask of you what I need you to be so I'm not suffering anymore. Instead, I'm going to ask of myself to see and understand this suffering, so that I no longer blame you, let alone hold your feet to the fire because something you've said or done has taken what freedom I had the moment before. And there's more to this. Because I know what happens inside of us when we hear something like this. Because isn't it amazing? One day it'll be amazing to you how absolutely instantaneous and firm it is when that pain comes up, that there can't be any reason for that pain other than what the reaction is pointing to as being that which has stabbed you and brought that up in you, and therefore I must deal immediately with you. Never suspecting that me trying to deal with you as I do is because you have not answered and given me what I've asked you to do, so that I don't have to suffer being me and my demands and this conditioned consciousness. Until we learn how to voluntarily bear this suffering, we will always blame others for it. And when we blame others for it, they will blame us for blaming them. And then we'll have war. Whether it's between a brother and a sister, a family and some relationship, or this country or that nation, this religion or that religion, it'll never come to an end. And the phenomena is, it's because each and every one of these isolated individuals and groups believes that what they are asking of others is simply that they see the world that the way we see it. And then when you see it as I've asked you to see it, we'll be at peace. And I just described to you incessant, eternal conflict that is the essence of an unconscious nature that then creates outside of itself the world that reflects it. Yes or no? Yes. Now, the next part, because some of you are, I know that it's okay. Look, the beautiful thing about the truth is that it's shocking, but it is a beneficent educator. Because little by little by little, it brings you, which you can't do. Most of you can't even actually suspect even what I'm actually trying to tell you, but you'll get there. You'll start to understand. Well, look, I get it. I kind of like what you're saying, but what about him? It's coming. I've been answering that question for 5,000 years. What about her? What about those people? You got to be kidding me. Me suffer for the sake of those people? I don't think so. I'm going to make them suffer, and when they come around, they'll realize I was right. Everything will be honky-dory. The more you do your own dedicated inner work, especially as concerns how quick we are to blame others, the more you do your own dedicated work, the less concerned you'll be with those who do no work at all. See, you know why you're so concerned with what others aren't doing? Because you need them to do what you need them to do so you can have what you've asked of them to take place. And so when you look at this monkey, look at this person, look at these stupid people, look at these men, look at these women, look at this, look at this, look at this. What am I pointing to? I'm pointing to what I believe is the source of my pain. And the source of my pain doesn't exist without my insistence that others do as I've asked them to do and be as I've asked them to be. Because if you would just take care of that, there'd be peace on earth. Will there? You're so concerned with what others aren't doing. You are. Absolutely. It consumes you that. And this is the funny thing, and please, I never mean disrespect, ever. You actually believe you're doing something. Look at the sacrifices I make. Oh, God. You'll know what a sacrifice is when, regardless the cost to you, you say, what is it that of myself I need to give here? And then die to everything that comes up and says, I can't go anymore. I can't give any more of myself. I can't stand this pain. And then when you see that there's something in you that has actually created the condition that you blame everyone else for, you'll understand why the sacrifice of yourself has to be made. And you will begin to have the wherewithal and the will itself to be able to do that, because at last you're beginning to see the truth that actually sets you free. We communicated. Let's take a break. We'll come back and have our dialogue.
All right, everyone, welcome back for the second part of class. We are about to go into an open dialogue with Guy where you can, if you're in GoToWebinar, you can raise your hand, click or tap the hand icon once, and that will put you in the queue. Let me know that you wish to speak with Guy. If you're on YouTube or Facebook, you can send a question or a comment into the chat area, and I'll try to cycle around and grab those as I see them. Before we do get started with the Q&A here, I just want to make a quick announcement about this past Sunday, which was Easter Sunday. We had a nice class here at the foundation, and one of the things that we were doing prior to the Easter Sunday class was that we were making a promotion of a package, a trio of previous Easter talks that Guy had given. When you give a small donation of $10 or more, we were giving you access to that package, and then adding this past Sunday's talk to that package as well. Just want to let you know that that is something you can still do if you wish, and you would just go to guyfinley.org/package, and that will give you details about how you can make a quick donation and get access to those materials. So for those of you who might have thought you missed the opportunity to do that, you are still able to do that this week. So guyfinley.org/package. And at the end of the broadcast, I'll tell you more about our schedule this weekend. But for now, I think we're ready to jump into our Q&A with Guy. So let's go ahead and bring him on, and we'll get started. And there he is. All right, Guy, you ready to go?
Yes, I am.
All right. Let me look and see if we have any hands up. We do not have any hands up just yet, but I do have a couple of written questions. So I'm going to send one over to you and read it to the group here. This came in from Ellen by email, so this was before class.
Yes.
This had to do with our last talk, with the Easter talk that I was just talking about. So Ellen just simply asks, does the left and right side of the cross represent opposing forces?
No, Ellen, they don't. Why would the mind and the heart be in opposition to each other unless the mind is sure what the heart should feel, and the heart knows better than what the intelligence, what wisdom can produce? The most difficult thing in the world for a human being is to understand that what we call opposing forces are complementary, and that they are the very source of creation itself, and that we're intended to be in relationship with those opposing forces through the awareness they create in us with the impressions they make. It is that awareness that is peace. It maketh the sun to shine on good and evil alike. That's all I have for that, Kate.
All right, well, Denise has raised her hand, so let's unmute Denise and bring her in. There you are, Denise, go ahead.
Hello, Guy, everybody.
Hi, Denise.
You'd think that after being married to someone for 50 years, almost 50 years, you'd have an understanding of how to work out these little kinks in your relationship. But there is something that I've discovered until really just recently that is just what you talked about tonight, that something that Denise has always perceived as a failing in her husband is that he procrastinates. And so it's been my job to nag, to push, to make honey-do lists, and never looking at why the situation persists from anything but the side of, well, it's his problem. But when I was finally able to really see myself, what I could see was impatience. And ever since I've been able to look at that impatience and drop those things that I was doing before, at least to the best of my ability, I've seen a total change in him and his willingness to just do things as he sees in his timing without my intervention. And so anyway, I just love this talk tonight because I've experienced the truth of that in my own life.
Yes, and take it further. Gosh, Denise, sometimes I'm handcuffed with the things that I can say because I would never want to imply or in any other way convey this idea that somehow the speaker all I can tell you, Denise, is that there are moments in our life, and we don't know for the most part when they come along, that just as you've started to discover, there was something underneath all of this that I didn't know, that my, what I called asking was really a demand, and that my demand was met with this idea that he was a procrastinator. But what if my demands and all of the distractions that they produce are themselves procrastination, keeping me from seeing my nature as it is by holding him at fault for how I feel? There's no end to love. There's no end to love. And there's no end to those who are willing to see life as it is shown to them. These shocking experiences of finding ourselves throwing bananas at monkeys and believing they're a monkey as I sit and throw a banana at them. We just want to believe that we're so special. You have something celestial that is so special it can't be defined, but you and I, without knowing it, defile it every single day with everything that we ask that others do and be that we're not willing to do and be ourselves, and that we refuse to see the fact of that. Keep going, Denise. Stay close as you can, and even closer. On we go, Kate.
All right. Just a reminder that if you want to speak to Guy, go ahead and raise your hand now, and I'll bring you in. We have plenty of time. Oh, and Denise, you put your hand back up. You know what? I'm going to unmute her really quick and see if she wanted to add something here.
Sure.
Go ahead, Denise.
Oh, no, that's fine.
Okay.
I understand what you said about going further, and but I'll have to ponder that one.
Please, for your sake.
All right. Sorry about that, Denise. I saw your hand pop back up, but it was probably just a little gremlin there.
Do you know why you have so many things that you ask of life? And how in your futile attempt to answer all that you ask of life, you can't stop running and planning and thinking and making lists? Do you know why? Because you believe that in asking you can get. You do not get by asking, you get by giving, and there is no other way. Back to you, Kate.
Guy, I'm going to read a question that came in from Lisa. Again, this was before class, but it's also related to the talk you gave on Easter Sunday.
Okay.
And let's see here. Okay. In the Sunday talk, to
Hold on.
paraphrase.
Kate, one second. One second.
Sure.
Who asks you to be perfect? Please don't let it slide by. Who asks you to be perfect? Imperfection itself, so that it can struggle forever trying to prove that it is as it's imagined itself to be. Human beings don't come to the divine because of their ability. They come through their willingness to see that they have attested an ability to them that doesn't exist. And then gradually, as you lose the whole illusion of a self that's somehow perfect and don't know why God ignores me, you'll understand exactly why. A, God has never ignored you. The divine has never stopped sending you relationships and messages, every last one of them saying, will you give something of yourself to this instead of demanding that others support you the way you imagine you should be? Now we can go back to the question, Kate.
All right, this is a question that came in from Lisa.
Yep.
She says, in the Sunday talk, to paraphrase, Guy said about the sun giving rise to the bulb, and in spring, that which was seeded from the sun within the bulb is called by the sun to rise up now and blossom. Later, he mentions that the phrase, I am love, is ridiculous. If the sun represents God and God is love, then is not the seed of love within the bulb, that is the person, waiting to be called by God to blossom? Is I am love being ridiculous, the husk / the bulb's resistance? Apologies if I've misremembered correct.
No, I think you've caught the impression quite well. I think the problem exists when the bulb believes that it's going to flower by itself because it's got love, and the flower itself is love because it's got pretty petals, and that the pretty petals are because of the sun, and that all that business is I in some individual stage of myself. That's the nonsense. Love isn't divided up into a bulb, a flower, and the sun, and the earth from which it rises, and it's not divided up from the earth that the petals fall back into to nourish the bulb that will grow from it. It is a singularity, and in singularity there is no me that is love. There is love, and I understand that or I don't. Done. Oh, come on, Jane. Jane wants to come up.
Very good. And then I have a question from Susanna.
Hello again, I'm Jane. You just reminded me, Guy, of what you spoke about. God can never ignore you. And when I first heard you say that, I thought, it's amazing to understand that, that will never happen. Like this Jane has thought has happened. But then I started pondering it a little bit, and I felt like weeping for God, that he can't ignore us.
Yeah. No, there's quite a bit of truth to what you're saying. Not that you should, well, if you want to weep away. No, I'm serious. Look, she has a very strong impression and a pretty darn good one. All of this for whom? And then you start to understand that all of this is a revelation. And Jane is an instrument of that revelation. She is also what is being revealed, and she is also what is being perfected through that revelation of that relationship, if she will get out of the way and stop asking that God acknowledge me. Yeah, good. The language is so fraught with frailty and incompleteness. You tell a person, listen, be patient. And they take that to mean it's okay for me to procrastinate. It's not okay for you to procrastinate. But if you do, the pain of your procrastination will grow and grow and grow. And then you'll blame God for your pain instead of understanding you were simply being asked all along to start acting and seeing your life through a new set of eyes. And then one day, this is what happens. It's in scale. See, you think when you're laying in bed and you're asleep, that when you open your eyes, you're awake. No, you're not awake when you open your eyes. You're just in a different kind of dream. That's all. But the dream you're dreaming isn't really a very good dream, except for the moments where the dream comes true. And then when it comes true, then you become attached to what you dreamed, and then it becomes a nightmare when something challenges what you've dreamed. And you keep believing somewhere or other God's interrupting the beauty, the love of me. No, he's not. He keeps bringing you to a point to show you, listen, if you want to wake up and know anything about real life, you're going to have to give up the dreamer. End of story. Which means I have to see the dreamer. And the dreamer is anything in us that asks anything of the moment other than to see the truth of ourselves in that moment. Do that first, you can ask anything else you want. Okay, Kate.
All right, here's our question from Susanna, and then I have no other questions or hands up, so this is last call if there's anyone out there who wants to talk to Guy. But Susanna says, how do we bear our own suffering? Is there something I can practice?
How about this, Susanna? For a way not just to bear your own suffering, but to understand how adverse this Susanna consciousness is to this practice. Don't think to yourself, this is a long-term thing. I'd be thrilled and you would be enlightened if you decided that, you know what, for 6 hours, I'm not going to talk to myself about anything that bothers me. That's it. Attempt it. And then you'll understand what it means to start bearing your own suffering when you see that you can't do that and that something wants to continue suffering and then giving you all kinds of questions to ask about how to deal with it. There it is. Don't be Susanna for 6 hours. Meaning, don't let Susanna cause you to think what she tells you you need to think about to bring an end to everything that bothers you in life. Don't think about him. Don't think about her. Don't complain about yourself. All of that, just temporarily suspend it. And if you attempt that, you'll see, OMG, I can't suspend anything. Something in me can't wait to talk to me about how to bring an end to suffering. And then you'll see, Susanna, the suffering you're in is because something can't stop talking to you about it. Then you'll have an insight, and then you'll be off to the races, and I'll go with you. Terry's up to the microphone.
Hi, everyone. My name is Terry. This will go actually good with that. So one of the exercises that I often do, I don't know how many years ago they used to do you guys remember? I think they even made bracelets. What would Jesus do? WWJD. Well, what would Terry do? That was my exercise. Like in the moment, what would Terry do right here? And don't do that. And honestly, it's been so beneficial in so many respects. You know, what would Terry do? She would say that thing. Don't say that thing. You know, and you get to actually feel a sense of Terry in these moments. And like today, for example, on Wednesdays, I arrive at class just, right after even class started. So I'm at the house and I'm waiting for the mom to get home, which, she has patients, they're doctors, and I could feel this pressure, right? And I'm looking at the clock, it's 10 to 6, and I don't know if I'm going to class or not. And so all of a sudden I see the mom pull up. Well, what would Terry do in that moment? You know what? She would have walked out that door, not acknowledged the mom at all, got in the car and took off. That's what Terry would do. But instead, I consciously walked out, I went up to the car door, said hello, have a great evening, the kids were great, and I went to the car. And there was pain in that.
Yeah.
There's pain in that. And pain in being kind. I mean, who knows? I mean, that's just crazy when you think about it. How can there be pain in kindness? But because it's not in this nature to be kind at all.
Correct. That's good. So all of you, when something happens, you ask yourself, what would Terry do? And then don't be Terry. Can I go?
No,
No?
nope. We have one hand that went up. Rebecca.
What would what would
Rebecca.
Guy do?
We'll take. Go ahead, Rebecca. I'm not hearing Rebecca, are you?
I don't think I am. I'm hearing voices, but not Rebecca.
All right, Rebecca, I know we've certainly talked to you lots before, so I don't know if something changed on your end. Maybe, do you have a headset plugged in? You could unplug it?
Don't rush, Rebecca, if you can sort it out. We're happy to wait.
And I'll just say one quick thing. If you're on a computer and you see in the control panel, there's a little audio tab, and you can just verify that the microphone is showing as the correct mic input.
I used to panic when I would hear things like that. But now I know what it means. It means
All right, Rebecca, I'm
call
sorry.
Kate as quick as you
Go
can.
ahead.
Is she up?
Yeah, sorry. Rebecca, we're not hearing you, but I'm going to come on and just read a quick comment that she sent in. Maybe it's related. So she did send the comment, dying to oneself in awareness is a trip. I will just continue to be in awareness, and I appreciate this space.
It is a trip. For those of you from the 60s and 70s, it is a trip. But don't miss the journey. The beauty is you're on it. You just have to see it. Good night.